unless you already went. Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler, taking a live look there from Newport, Oregon, and that is where we took a visit not very long ago to talk about the volcano that lies about 300 miles off the coast right there. And that is what this segment is. Again, this is Fox 12 Now. I am live streaming here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, as we do every weekday, starting around 1 p.m., going throughout the afternoon and covering a wide range of topics. But as I mentioned, went out of the studio a couple of weeks ago to the research vessel Atlantis, which was docked there, preparing to go out on a mission to replace monitors and to monitor, in fact, the undersea volcano, the axial seamount. So around 300 miles off the coast there, this is a huge volcano that has been speculated to possibly erupt really at any time or even into next year. It's hard to tell exactly, but that's why it is so well monitored with a regional cable array and a number of different things that we'll get into during this interview. As the vessel was getting ready to go out, I went and visited UW professor, University of Washington professor Deborah Kelly, as she was ready to lead a team of students. In part, there's a lot of other people that are on this vessel as well, but in part to talk about that volcano, to research it, to send remote operated vehicles down there. We get to see all of that during this segment. This is a long interview, and we really appreciate the access to get to go on board to find out how they're going to keep people abreast and keep people informed of what is going on out there at the volcano. So let's jump right into it. Here's our trip to the research vessel Atlantis. Thank you so much. I've been so excited about coming out here, for months since we talked about this. So we're here in Newport. We are here at the terminal. Right behind us is the vessel you're going to be going out on.
Operated by the National Science Foundation. It's actually owned by the Navy. It's one of the, we call it a global class research ship, so they're all about 274 feet long. Can go out for multiple weeks, usually about 6 weeks is kind of a max that we go out to, but they can go any place in the world, Atlantic, Pacific, South Pacific, and they do that every year. And so what we're doing today is we have the largest underwater observatory off the coast. It's called the Regional Cable Array, and it's a whole system of fiber optic cables that basically bring the internet into the ocean, clear out to 300 miles offshore to axial seamount, and then a network that is offshore here that goes down to the subduction zone. And so we have about 150 instruments that bring almost any kind of data you can imagine from the oceans at the speed of light to shore, and anybody in the world can look at them. So every year we go out and turn about 100 instruments. They get biofouled or stuff happens, and so we bring them up and have ones refreshed that year, and we put them back down. So it's incredibly busy. Often we'll have about 60 to 80 dives with the robotic vehicle. Wow. And so the robotic vehicle either picks it up directly under its belly, or we have it's like an elevator that we take to the sea floor with equipment. So it's just going up and down. It's more like a industry style operation because time is money out there. So we're pretty efficient. Yeah.
And with that many different sensors and different kinds of equipment, I would imagine.
Yeah, and there's just requirements for all the instruments and packages and things like that. So.
And so the data that you're collecting out there. So what this is monitoring, you mentioned axial seamount.
So we measure everything from the volcano is maybe it will erupt this coming spring. Lately it's been erupting in the 3 past times it's erupted in the spring, so it's undergoing inflation. There's lots of earthquakes. We can measure that inflation. We just measured the tsunami that came ashore. So we have a bunch of instruments for that. We also measure, there's active hydrothermal vents or underwater hot springs there, so we measure the chemistry. We actually have a very novel instrument that filters microbial DNA. So we have the longest longest record of microbes in the ocean of anywhere. Over a decade of how they change with time and temperature and fluid chemistry. We've got fluid samplers, so we do that. And then closer to shore, we have instruments that monitor. There's a methane seep site where there's methane gas, kind of an ice capsule under the seafloor in the sediment, and there's thousands of these methane seep sites along the Cascadia margin, but only 3 of them have been looked at in any detail, so we have a whole set of sensors there to look at that. They put these incredible bubble plumes out. We have some imagery of that. Just like the hydrothermal vents, they have a novel microbial biological community that thrives off of not sunlight but gases. So we have instruments there, and then we have instruments to measure deformation along the Cascadia subduction zone. And then we have 2 different moorings. They're state-of-the-art. Everything's cabled. The one has a 200-meter platform, so about 600 feet beneath ocean surface, with a winch, an underwater winch that goes up and down to the water column, measures things like carbon dioxide, acidification, temperature, biological productivity. So there's about 275 scientists involved in the initial planning for this, and so all different kinds of processes go on in the ocean, and we get to do that and see it all coming in real time.
I mean, that's incredible, that much equipment, and then being 300 miles offshore or wherever all this stuff is. To think that that's out there in the middle of the ocean. And you mentioned axial seamount as far as potentially erupting. I know maybe it was going to be later this year, maybe next year, but something like that. A lot of people have been discussing it. So if you're out there and it erupts, just to ask this, I mean, would that be of any danger to you, or?
No, we don't think it will, because typically if it reacts like it did before, there's thousands of earthquakes every single day before it erupts, and we're at a few hundred usually. But if it did, people think it might be like Mount St. Helens going on. They're not explosive like that. They're more like Hawaii, but they also have a mile of seawater on top, so it's not nearly as explosive. And so, I think we could dive pretty close to the flow, which would be so the Juan de Fuca Ridge is part of the Mid-Ocean Ridge Spreading Center, which is the longest network of underwater volcanoes on the planet. They're probably always erupting, but we've never been on a mid-ocean ridge and seen one. So it would be like a dream come true if that happened. So a lot of people jumping up and down on the ship, even though we're not supposed to.
So not danger, to be excitement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to see a lava flow underwater like that would be spectacular. And they run like a river. You can see channelways, like a stream bed. You can see that on the top of the volcano, where just lava flows run. They form channels, and you can see where there's been lava lakes. And
that's so cool. Yeah. Well, and with this specialized equipment, you mentioned you can get down there really close to it. So can you tell us just about a couple of those? I know the remote operated vehicle that you have.
Yep. So the remotely operated vehicle is Jason, which is also it's the U.S. Main deep submergence vehicle that's not human occupied. So it also has a fiber optic cable, a tether, and so it can go down about 6,000 meters, so 18,000 feet, more than that. And then it has 4K cameras, sensors, and so just like the submarine fiber optic cables, all that information streams up to the ship in real time. So it's almost like being there, right? And so typically our deepest dive is about 9,500 feet. So it goes down about 25 meters a minute, so maybe an hour and a half to get down to the bottom. On top of axial, it takes us 45 minutes, and so you're automatically there, and the lights are on, and so it's spectacular to see. The students, this last leg, they'd never seen the vents before, so there was a whole bunch of students in the control van just,
Oh yeah,
they were so excited. So that's why we do it. Right?
And how many students are out on this trip?
This year we have 13 total, but typically we would have, we only have 2 legs this year. Typically we would have around 25 to 30. So undergrads, I've taken over 200 students to sea before. So that's a lot. It changes their life. A lot of them say so.
I bet. And how long will you be out on this trip?
Just 2 weeks. So we already had a 2-week one. Typically our cruises every year are 30 to 45 days, something like that, depending on what we're doing. So we come out. We have so much gear to get on and off the boat that we come in, like we came in yesterday, offload the instruments we pulled off the seafloor and the water column, reloaded new ones, and so that's what we did yesterday, was restock the ship with infrastructure.
What do you think is the most important thing the general public should know about the research you do?
I think that it addresses processes that go on in the world's oceans, and we often, like storms, eruptions, underwater earthquakes, landslides, we're never there in the right place at the right time. So like a big storm, everyone's in their bunk, or the ship's not out there, right? And so this brings data to anybody in the world, and it gives them a eye into what the deep ocean looks like. And then we're just studying. We have so many different kinds of instruments that it's the only place, one of 2 places in the world where we have so many instruments in one site that we can look at the interconnectedness of all the processes that go on and what impacts them. So how does chemistry change with temperature, with big storms, and it's very rare in the ocean.
Yeah,
and it's 24/7 too. Normally in my lifetime when I was starting out, if we were lucky, we would get 1 cruise in the summer. And then we didn't know what was going out there, right? So yeah.
And now you can
we can watch it. Yeah. So we have an underwater high definition camera on axial seamount, and it streams live every single day, 300 miles to shore, and you can see how the hydrothermal vent changes and all the animals, and so it really is spectacular.
So for everybody wondering what's going on down there, you can take a look now.
Exactly. And we have sites where you can see the earthquakes every single day. They come in live. When the earthquake, the magnitude 8, it came. You could hear it with our instruments on the volcano, and we had instruments, hydrophones that you can hear that, and it's a pretty good rattle, and it rattled the volcano for 4 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and then about 9 hours later, the tsunami came over, and we measured that, and we measured it clear to shore. It was going at about 270 miles an hour from axial to our site. It took it 1 hour, and it was 270 miles to get from axial seamount to 14 miles off the coast.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was really cool. We were very happy.
Well, with this kind of so this kind of data that you can gather, does that mean that you can help? If say the big one happens or something like that, would this be information?
So this is a foundation for creating a larger observatory, and NSF funded 2 years ago a very large program to add a bunch of instruments onto your cable off of Newport, because this whole Cascadia subduction zone, they call it a locked subduction zone, which means that we haven't had a big earthquake like a magnitude 9 since 1700. And from looking at landslides and things, it looks like maybe 350, 400 years. It's not perfect. But there's ideas that maybe there's triggers before a big one. The big earthquakes along the subduction zone, Cascadia, you don't see them except off of Newport, right where our gear is. And so we're adding a bunch of instruments next summer to really do a lot of detailed measurements about the deformation and the smaller earthquakes and big earthquakes. So to found a foundation of an early warning system.
So that could help early warning and maybe even prediction.
Absolutely, because right now all the seismometers, most of them are on the continents, but the earthquakes occur offshore, right? And so because if an earthquake hits to the south, typically the Cascadia, the few measurements we have kind of unzips all the way to Vancouver Island, and that it creates a seismic wave as it's unzipping, right? And so because our instruments, when they feel an earthquake, that because it's connected to the fiber, that goes at the speed of light, which is much faster than with the earthquake waves. So the idea is you can have predictive capability, not predictive, but you know how long, you know the size, you know the location, and you know how long it's going to get to Seattle. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's our hope, is to add onto that. Other countries like Japan has a giant network, so they can cut off fast trains and gas lines when that happens, so prevent fires and things like that. So that's our goal in the future.
To get to that level.
Yeah. So.
Well, can we go take a look at something?
Absolutely. My pleasure. I've been on the middle Atlantic on this boat, and it goes all over the place.
So all over the world.
Yeah. Then we go under Yaquina Bridge there and out.
This will end up on this.
Yeah, these are connector ports, so a cable it's like a series of wall sockets, basically. One is for the connection cable that gives it power and bandwidth to shore, so every instrument has its own communication protocol and power requirements, right? This is a wet mate connector, and what's cool, so it'll plug into one of those slots over there, and when you plug them in, they squirt out, salt water and electronics don't go together very well, so it squirts out a little bit of oil so no salt water gets in, and then we can power it up. So this is one of our digital still cameras. It's thousands of images every single year. So this is one of the first things we'll do is we have one down at the nearshore site. We'll unplug the old one. We use titanium. Almost everything's titanium. It's doesn't corrode.
Just leave it down there.
Shoot and try, yeah. Instrument that measures different kinds of biology in the water column. In this case, it's for little animals called zooplankton. So that one will go in the water. These are our heaviest beasts. So it has the same kind of, it's kind of like a junction box, only these are in shallow water. That will pick up whales. So we have 10 years of whale calls off the coast. So this is the main workhorse for the U.S. For deep water, shallow to deep water robotic vehicle work.
So for the entire U.S.
For the National Science Foundation, yeah. Wow. So this is completely funded by the National Science Foundation. We set records for, with the Jason team, set records for numbers of dives because it really is, normally on a science dive it might be, you want the vehicle down as long as possible on science dives, but we're just the opposite because we have all our gear to get on and off, so it might be only on the deck for 1 or 2 hours versus 8 hours. There's 4K cameras, there's cameras to look under the vehicle, to look after the vehicle, there's instruments, there's sonar so you can look forward, a bunch of lights. We're doing some special camera work this year, measure conductivity, or how salty the water is, the temperature, the density. But definitely when the volcano goes off, we'll be triggering some models. So we get fluids that are trapped in sterile bags that are gas tight, so we can also measure gases, fluid chemistry, and DNA over time, which is nowhere else has that. All the video comes in from Jason here, so we can watch. So yeah, so we know what we're seeing. Yeah. Once it gets in the water, as soon as it gets in the water, we flip it so we can see the 4K camera. Well, we have different cameras we can look at, but that's usually what we use. We're always looking at weather. We trust weather maps about 3 days out. We measure things like oxygen in the water samples in here. It really tells us a lot more about the processes that are going on. Multi-beam sonar that images the sea floor, but it also images stuff in the water column. So at the methane sieve sites, we can actually see bubbles coming out of the sea floor and figure out if we want to take a sample or not from in here. This is usually where we'll have the 4K video in front of us. There's multiple cameras, so they can look under the vehicle, they can look behind, they can look forward. Yeah, this is a flyaway system, so it can fly away any place in the world. So they'll dismantle. It's basically functional two containers, right?
So this goes with Jason, wherever Jason
Yeah,
goes.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and this is the control room of everything.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a huge thing to get everything in place and wired. You can see cables everywhere. Yeah. They also have to put the vehicle on the water, all the handling system for the vehicle. So it's a really big operation. Pilot, navigator, tether management person, and they can interchange depending on what we're doing. And then there's always, we call it the hot seat, which is they control the 4K camera. So we discovered some new animals, new fish down here. And then the students, they'd be watching the video. Now they've created their own biological catalog, and so we save it all the time now. We have a whole different group of people that are experts at what they do, right? And so it's very interactive, and we can share it with the students.
Truly incredible to get to go on that and actually take a look at all of those different instruments and everything else that they're doing there. And a huge thank you to, well, really to Deb and to the entire team there for having us out. We really appreciate that, to getting that kind of access and to find out more information about the underwater volcano, the axial seamount, and all the work that goes in to monitor that. So in case you've been wondering, it is very, very, very well monitored, as demonstrated by that. And some of the different information they can bring back there and the speed of light is just fascinating stuff. And we have more interviews if you want to find out more about the volcano and about some of the monitoring and maybe some of the data that they collect. We have more interviews from Fox 12 Now. You can go to kptv.com, click on the Fox 12 Now tab or Fox 12 Oregon app. Great ways to follow along with all the things we get to do here. Like I said, we live stream here from the newsroom every weekday, but we also do get to go out into the field sometimes and see some pretty amazing things and get some access like that. Huge thank you to Zach for editing that and shooting it. Zach Stotlin, a great job on that to bring that to everybody and to put it all together. So good work all around. And thanks everybody for joining us again. This is Fox 12 Now. Thanks for watching. Whether you're watching live or after the fact, feel free to share these episodes. We'll talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.